Assassin's Creed Unity and Assassin's Creed Syndicate are two games that are often compared due to them being both the entries of the series into the 8th generation of consoles, and for them both being somewhat responsible for the series' soft reboot in 2017. Although the two games run on the same engine, retain the same art styles, and take place in relatively similar time periods, they are distinctly different, and so today I thought I'd look back at two of the more controversial entries into the series to see which one is truly better. Before we get into it, make sure to hit like, hit subscribe, and let's see which game is better, AC Unity or AC Syndicate. The centre point of the series' initial appeal, having a layered parkour system is essential for any entry into it, and Syndicate doesn't even make an effort to achieve this, sake of making its streets accurately as wide as London in reality. The rope launcher would replace any and all freedom of movement, resorting the player to continually press a single button to move across the world. The removal of a free jump, as well as a reduction in the speed of the player and a complete lack of level design, leaves parkour as barely even a feature of the game. Meanwhile, Assassin's Creed Unity made its freedom of movement an active priority through its entire development cycle, highlighting it as a return to the truly free player-controlled system of the initial entry in 2007. Thanks to Unity's technical deficiencies, it leaves the system slow and stuttery, with input lag and an inconsistent snap targeting that can leave the player frustrated. However, when a parkour route is planned and mastered, Unity provides the best parkour gameplay experience in the entire medium, and I say that without hyperbole. This round goes to Unity. Although the parkour of these two games is too often wrongly compared, the stealth is rightfully so, as it stands as the one area where Syndicate actually evolved upon the past system. Unity introduced a black box mission structure that, for the first time since AC1, flawlessly presented the assassin fantasy. An open arena, a single target to be eliminated by a lone, hooded assassin, using the crowd and the world around him to blend and reach his target unseen. Unity opened the world up to you, a world that felt oppressive and genuinely dangerous, largely thanks to the risk-reward element of being seen. Not only did it provide external motivation to remain unseen, but intrinsic too, with the completion of a flawless kill providing an unmatched feeling to the player. Syndicate took this mechanic and fleshed it out even more, providing wider spaces with greater variety in the options of execution. On top of that, Syndicate reintroduced multiple key features of past games that built on the base gameplay, namely whistling, throwing knives, and poison darts that again just add more variety. I would argue that both of these systems stand near the top compared to the rest of the series, but Syndicate takes this category. Combat is probably where these two games diverged the most, as they each attempted to redefine what the system would be in the context of Assassin's Creed, which had gone through a devolution from the series' beginning. Unity took the initial defensive system that prioritized timing, patience, and most of all avoiding conflict, and built it out into probably the most genuinely difficult combat system in the series. Gone were unstoppable counter animations and kill streaks, replaced with hitboxes and mechanics that mirrored real-world sword fighting. Thanks to this system, it became difficult and in the early stages of the game near impossible to fight off big groups of guards, adding to the risk-reward of the game's mission design as a stealth-focused entry. Meanwhile, Syndicate, for whatever reason, decided to take the exact opposite direction from doing away with any focus on defense and instead resorting to an animation-based combat system that required the player to button mash attack and occasionally dodge with no real thought for how or why they were doing anything. The process of whittling down an enemy's health in Syndicate is a simple one, but is incredibly tedious. The best way I've heard it described by my former podcast host Walshy is like a process of beating someone up with a set of car keys. And it makes every single combat encounter hard to sit through, not because of a difficulty curve, but because of a complete lack of thought. Unity takes this round in a landslide. Now, this is a bit of a strange one, as despite the foundations of the series being built on strong storytelling, both Unity and Syndicate act as low points for the series' narrative prowess. Both games did away with near enough the entire modern day, with only minimal cutscenes splattered throughout each serving that plotline, which acted as the central story of the game for years prior. In the Animus, it wasn't much better. However, both Unity and Syndicate's ancestor storylines fell completely flat for very different reasons. Unity introduces some very interesting concepts, presenting a brotherhood that has power and influence, a corrupted brotherhood that's ideals have fallen by the wayside in exchange of diplomacy and politics. An Assassin-Templar conflict that almost comes to an end but persists due to the fanatics of each order. However, these concepts act as just that, concepts. They're told through the lens of a messy love story that fails to truly capture the audience's heart, and still tries to shoehorn in a Templar Grandmaster needing killed, which leads to the structure and pacing of the game being mismanaged and at times incomprehensible. If you want to see a more in-depth look at this story, I rewrote the game a few months ago, so feel free to check out that video after this one. Syndicate, meanwhile, presented an absolutely laughable story, and not because it was actually funny. Syndicate's story was not only comically shallow in terms of themes and messaging, but it was conceptually unfeasible, as it sees the protagonists take over London, the hub of the Industrial Revolution, in the span of 6 months. As they destroy the global banking system, tear down the transport and medical industries, and create a gang that wears bright green top hats. The game feels at nearly every point of contact like it's a complete parody of the series it's a part of, and I can't take it seriously as a piece of writing in any sense. Although I value what Unity brings to the table more, both of these games fail to execute on their narratives, and by extension, neither deserves a point here. The round is a tie. Both the worlds of AC Unity and Syndicate are gorgeous. Near perfect historical recreations of their respective real-world counterparts, each boasting one-to-one recreations of historical landmarks, immersive moments in the open world, and no lack of things to see. But what splits the difference between these worlds is the content they offer. Syndicate, being one of the biggest worlds in the series, sees most of the player's time travelling from one point to another for minutes, with a very limited number of fleshed out side activities to engage in. The burrow mechanic stands as a repetitive, unbearable experience that mirrors Mafia 3's abhorrent mission design. The collectibles are even more unengaging than they were in previous games, and the character side missions are alright at best. And again, you need to traverse a huge amount of open empty space to even reach any of these things. Meanwhile, Unity, with its far smaller size, showcases a world stuffed to the brim with content around every corner, some better than others, but none completely mindless. Whether it's the murder mysteries, the Paris stories, the Nostradamus enigmas, the co-op missions, the list goes on, and that's without even mentioning the intrinsic fun the player can have in practicing complex parkour routes. Everything the open world holds in Unity is there in order to further immerse the player in the assassin fantasy within Paris, and in undertaking these activities, you truly can sink endless hours into Unity's open world without even scratching the surface. So Unity takes this category once again. Now usually the final category in these videos is replayability, however both of these games are just about as replayable as one another, so instead I'm going to look at the two sets of additional content the games have. Syndicate's DLCs, both The Last Maharaja and Jack the Ripper, act as underwhelming, boring, unimmersive pieces of content that don't provide enough to justify their respective prices. Meanwhile, Unity's Dead Kings DLC is one of the single best pieces of Assassin's Creed content we've ever had, and it was given out to everyone who owned the game for free. For a more in-depth look at both of these and more, check out Walshy's complete ranking of every DLC in the series. And of course, it goes without saying that Unity takes this category, and with it, Assassin's Creed Unity wins this battle in a landslide, standing as far and away the better game out of these two entries. Hopefully, now they can stop being compared so much. With all that being said, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to hit like, and if you're new here, hit subscribe with post notifications turned on, and let me know what you think of each of these games in the comments down below. With all that being said, I've been Joe, aka Founder Scarab, and I will see you in the next one.